What can a professional football player teach you about life? The answer might surprise you. I'm Pinchas Taylor, and this is Taylor Talks. Hey everybody, welcome to Taylor Talks. We put out these videos every single week, and if you're following us on Facebook, please like our page in the link above. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button in the lower right. Let's jump right into it. Recently, we sat down with Miami Dolphins great Kim Bokamper, who invited us to his home to talk about what has kept him inspired throughout his life. Let's check it out. So Kim, tell us a little bit about your career as a Dolphin. Were you on season before the Dolphins?
No, I was drafted by the Dolphins in 1976. I grew up in Northern California, went to school at San Jose State, and I got drafted, and I've been in South Florida ever since. I tell people I was climatically deprived. I had to live in Northern California and South Florida my whole life, so tough struggles with the weather here.
Nice. So tell us a little bit about your career. Tell us about, what it was like playing for the Dolphins, the whole experience.
Yeah, I'm a little different than a lot of guys that played in the NFL. I kind of came from a small school in California, didn't get recruited, kind of bounced my way around through college, through circumstances, and ended up, being surprised by the time I was a senior in college. People were talking about me in the NFL, so I ended up getting drafted and was fortunate enough to play for the Dolphins for 10 years and had a great career and was able to raise a beautiful family and call South Florida my home for the last 40 some odd years. And, football has been a great springboard for me to life after football and business and a lot of different things. So it's kind of the cornerstone of what my life has been about, football, the game of football. I don't think it's my end-all, be-all, but it certainly has ignited everything in my life that I've done before and after it.
What would you say would be some highlights in your career?
I grew up in a family. My dad was a working guy. He's a career Navy guy. Worked 2 jobs all the time when he got done with his service, and so I was all about working. And so I didn't expect much. And my dad really didn't watch me play much high school football or college football, by that matter. I think so. Really one of the highlights I got a chance to play in the which at the time was really probably the biggest college all-star game of the year, the East-West Shrine game out in Palo Alto, California, and it was the first time he saw me play a football game. And I won the Defensive Player of the Game award and the whole thing. So it was a very special moment. So I played in 2 Super Bowls with the Dolphins. It was certainly a highlight of my career. Played in Pro Bowl, which was very, from an individual standpoint, very rewarding. But if I was to capsulize the one, that moment probably was maybe the best moment in my football career.
Can you describe as a professional football player some of the training that goes in, not just practices, but some of the from your diet, from the athletics, from all angles?
It really, you really have to create a lifestyle. If you're going to be a professional, I can't speak for basketball or baseball, but for football, and especially nowadays, it's even gotten more so now. I mean, we were a little bit antiquated back when I played, and nutrition wasn't as highly thought of back then, or wasn't. It was kind of just getting a foothold in the growth market of nutrition. Now they're so to the other end, but you kind of had to guide your own life. You had to figure out how to get your rests, how to train, how to eat properly, and so it's a discipline. It was a discipline that you had, and we weighed in once a week during the regular season, or during the regular season. So we had to make weight and everything. So that always kind of dictated yourself. But it was a lot more back then. It was a lot more self-reliant. You had to go out and do it yourself. Whereas now, everything is structured for the players from off season, from nutrition, from hydration, from their workout programs and everything. So it's a little bit more, it's kind of that football mentality. Just tell me what time I need to be on the bus, and that's all I need to know. So they kind of have that mentality now.
Got it. So it's like almost like a small army.
Yeah, very, very much so. Yes.
Okay, very cool. Through your career, are there things that either a mentor, a coach, Coach Shula, shared with you that was inspiring to you, that helped keep you going, or things that you learned in particular that, when it was a day where, it's not always easy to wake up and be on the bus on time and keep that diet. And what were some of the ways in which you found, that you could persevere when things got tough?
That's a funny question for me, and it's a little bit, because I had a different path than most guys. Come here. And, like I said, I didn't get recruited out of high school, so I went to a little small school in Minnesota and kind of paid my way. And then when my mother passed away when I was there, so I came back, went to a junior college in San Jose, and then I didn't get a scholarship until I was a junior in college. So I paid my way through school my first 2 years, and but that process to me goes all the way back to, I talk about my dad a lot. I think my dad probably was the biggest influence in my life, although he wasn't in my life a lot. Not because we were a separated family or anything, but he was in the career. He was in the Navy. He was an aviator. He was an engineer and plane. He was gone all the time. He was always somewhere in Asia or whatever. He spent a lot of time away from home. But when he was home, he instilled a discipline in all of us. And I tell you, he didn't care for sports, didn't know much about sports, didn't want to know anything about sports.
Oh, wow.
And so he always told me, look, if you can play sports, but you're going to do your work first. So, when I started playing football when I was a kid, 9, 10 years old, we'd have games on Sundays, and Sunday mornings I had to clean the garage before I could go play football.
Okay.
So I didn't clean the garage, I couldn't go play football. And that was he was a work, that was the mentality I grew up with. And like I said, he didn't care much about sports, but he cared about me not quitting. And when I was in junior high school, I tried out for the baseball team. And I made the team, but I wasn't playing, and I was getting frustrated with that. And so I quit the team. And I remember came home, didn't tell my dad I quit. And then the next day, he came home early for some reason. I was home. He goes, what are you doing home? He goes, I thought you had baseball practice. I said, no, I quit. And he just went crazy. I mean, he wasn't real happy with that.
Oh, wow.
And he wasn't happy. He wasn't disappointed because it was baseball or football or something else. He was just disappointed that I quit. And he, at that point, he let me know in no uncertain terms that you don't quit. If you start something, finish it. And so that always stayed with me. And the reason I kind of talk about my path through college was it was a tough path. I mean, I went to a school that was smaller than my freshman year. I went to a school that was smaller than my high school.
Oh,
and
wow.
played. It wasn't Division I, it wasn't Division II, it wasn't Division III. It was a step below that. Then I went to junior college, which is kind of an odd path, and then played at a relatively obscure school at San Jose State. So I kind of followed a different. But the one thing and believe me, there were plenty of times along the way where you get frustrated and you want to quit, but I just refused to quit. And I think that's kind of been that's kind of been the driving force behind everything I've done. Football, pre-football, post-football, and throughout my life now continues to be pretty much dictated by that.
Never give up.
No.
That's great advice. I mean, because there's so many times in life and in anything that, start something and, the easiest thing to do is just forget it.
All of us at some point in our life, and maybe multiple times in our life, are forced to quit something. You're forced to say you can't do that anymore. You're forced to say, especially if you're in sports, you get too old, you can't do it anymore. This, that, all those types of things. And that's a different thing. But to voluntarily walk away from something that you started, look, I've got involved in things work-wise, and where I got into it and said, man, it's really not where I want to end up. And I wouldn't quit, but I would find an exit strategy to get me to another something else.
Right. Call it an audible.
Yes. Okay, look, I know this isn't quite what I want to do. I don't see this being what I want to do for the next 20 years of my life. Much like guys that didn't, I got done playing football, I was 31, 32 years old.
Right.
And most of the guys, most of my contemporaries that didn't play football, I grew up with or knew, they were just kind of starting their careers off because they had gone, they got out of college, tried this job, didn't like it, and then went to that job and didn't like it, and then found something they can make a career out of, and so I kind of had to go through that at post 32 years old.
Right. And after having a good career.
Yeah, but I never moved from one thing to another unless I had something to go to. Mm-hmm. So it was more. I wouldn't call it. It was more of just kind of weaving my way through. To me, it was kind of a business education for me. So that's kind of how I've lived my life.
Let's sum it up. If you had one message for young people today that were, not necessarily going into athletics, but just starting out life and kind of looking at life, what would you tell them?
It's funny. I'm going through this with my daughter a little bit. She does some work for the Dolphins, and there are times when it's especially with things that are going on with the hurricanes we've had, and they're very big in relief programs. Okay. And so sometimes they're working long hours. They're working 12-hour, 13-hour shifts, and she'll come home and go, I'm so tired. I go, look, I tell her, I said, well, that's why they call it work. It's not fun. It's work. And so I would just tell people that persevere. Just nothing's easy. I don't care what it is. It's funny because I'm in the restaurant business now, and we've been in the business now for 10 years, and everyone's told me, when I got into that business, everyone goes, oh, geez, that's the toughest business to get into. Why you want to get into that? And I previously, the first business I got into, I bought an automobile battery distributorship from Coral Gables to Key West. I own that territory. Okay. And when I was getting that, everyone said, it's the toughest business. Why you want to get in this business? It's the toughest business. But I kind of saw that as a challenge, and I always told myself, well, the answer is, well, then show me an easy business. I'll get into an easy business. Right. I don't think there's one out there exists. But I think you got to find your path and just persevere through it. And there's nothing wrong with making changes. There's nothing wrong with coming to a fork in the road and choosing to go in a different direction, as long as you're going somewhere and have a plan for going through it. But I think it's just, I've had a lot, probably more than most people and probably more than I deserve, but I've had a lot of very, very high points in my life, both as an athlete, as a person, as a father, as a husband, as all those things. I've had some great, great highs in my life, but I've also had some very tough times and tough lows, and I've just learned to fight through those, just fight through them, because eventually, if you give up, your chances of succeeding are diminished. If you fight through and persevere, I think you get rewarded for that at some point along the lines, whether it's personal, whether it's professional, whether it's spiritual, whatever way it is. I think perseverance is the test, and if you can persevere, you finally get to the ultimate reward for yourself.
So when the lows come around, keep your nose to the grind.
Keep your nose to the grindstone and fight your way through it. Yeah.
All right, awesome. Kim, thanks so much for having us out here.
Right, thank you very much.
That's so awesome.
Okay,
thank you very much.
Sure.